since we are federal, it's very important for us to raise center-state relations. Especially non-BJP ruled states are very upset with the center on two issues. First, let me take the issue of allocation of funds. They seem to think that there is some kind of an internal aid mechanism where the well-off states are constantly funding those receiving states, and they are largely in the north. So there is a certain, dissonance over that, and the states in the south keep raising it. Also, the related fact which they keep pointing out, which is factually right, is that social indicators are far better. Their outcomes in terms of population control and education are far better. So they are feeling that they are kind of the question is, are they being punished for performance? How do you look at it?
So I'll begin and then you. So one is, as you know, Srinivas, that this is a really old issue. This is not new. If you remember the Sarkaria Commission, this whole thing of over-centralization, first of all, it was built into the Constitution. The center always had much more fiscal levers than the states. And then whether opposition states were targeted or biased against, that was a big issue from the 70s, 80s onwards, when you had non-Congress governments coming up. So the issue got somewhat addressed or attenuated from the 90s onwards because you didn't have majority governments. So this issue is much more acute when you have a majority government, less so when you have coalition governments, because the coalition partners make sure, right? Now,
Isn't that disparity?
Yeah, so the second is, the population issue was indeed the case that the South and the West had addressed the fertility challenge much earlier. But we now see a strong convergence. Fertility is declining. West Bengal, as a poor state, has a fertility rate which is the same as the South. So, and UP and Bihar, have not gone down as much, but the decline is perceptible. So the convergence on fertility is undoubtedly happening. Now, the whole issue of this fiscal transfers and how this has happened, I'll turn to it.
So I think this is a great question that you've raised, and I think it's very important to kind of place this in context. So again, look at this chart. In any large federal country, all over the world, there will always be some transfer from the richer states to the poorer states, because as a country, you want every state to be able to provide the same level of, health, education, public goods, and that will always be a feature of all federal states to attempt some equalization. It's part of the nation building process. And this chart shows that actually over time, the transfers to poorer states have been high, but also rising over time. So now we come to the real issue, which I think is the real issue, Srinivas, that you raised. Okay, so this is the chart on fiscal transfers. So above the horizontal line, those are regions that get more money, fiscal transfers from the other states than they generate from their own tax revenue, from their own GDP. So they are beneficiaries. Their transfers exceed their contributions. Below are the other way around, the donors, those whose contributions exceed transfers. Now, the first interesting point to note is, the beneficiaries are not just the Hindi heartland states, but also the eastern states. But the largest beneficiaries are the Hindi heartland. But in terms of the donor states, what you will see from this is that the largest donors in some appropriately measured way is not the South. The South is a donor, but it's the West and Haryana that are the biggest donors. So while there are, donors and beneficiaries, the South is not the one that is paying the most. That's the first point. But the last point I want to make is, the real problem here is the following. It's the fact that these transfers are rising consistently over time and don't seem to incentivize good performance and penalize bad performance. That's the heart of it. That if there was some limited amount that was being transferred, and if it was somehow related to performance, and also if there's a trajectory for these declining over time gradually, I think it would be sustainable. But the problem is not the level of the transfer, but the fact that it's rising consistently in the face of performance which is not in fertility. On fertility, Devesh is right, but on economic performance, it's like UP Bihar have grown very slowly, and despite that, they get more and more resources from the southern state. So this political consciousness that somehow underperformance is being rewarded and not penalized, and overperformance is being penalized, I think that's the heart of the political challenge